What's up, everybody? Welcome to episode 435 of Opinions May Vary. I stuttered. I'm going to keep going. We're powering through it. I am your host, JR. My co-host with me, Alex.
Hello.
How are you doing?
I'm good.
It's been a while, but we're going to make it worth it.
Mm-hmm.
We took a little, we had our announcement on the last episode, took a breather, and now we're talking, we have two guests this week. We have an old friends, new friends situation going on here. I don't know if anyone listening has seen The Christmas Toy, but that's the title song, Old Friends, New Friends. Anyways, this week we are joined by our old friend, DW Kann. DW, thank you so much for coming on.
Hey guys, how you doing tonight? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We also have DW's current partner in crime, however you want to put it, associate on the thing we're going to be talking about today, joined by Mr. Ryan Matta. Ryan, thank you for coming on as well.
Yeah, thanks very much for having us.
I've been looking forward to this. We've talked with DW with you a couple times in the past regarding your creative books with Lovecraft PI at length. They're always fun. Like it's a neat concept. We've talked a lot about that in the past. Someone can. I meant to look up the actual episode numbers, but of course I did not because I'm stupid. But if you go on our website, you can just search either Lovecraft. That'll probably pop right up. Anyways, we've talked to you in the past, but now you got a new thing going on. What are we going to be talking about today? What projects do you got in the oven, so to speak?
Yeah, so right now we have a current Kickstarter campaign going along with Mike Shea. We had done a crossover with Lovecraft PI and the Miskatonic High guys. We did 2 issues, and right now we have a trade paperback that's out, and we added 23 new pages that enhances the story, or not enhances, I should say, continues the story along with what happened to the kids and Lovecraft after issue 2 of the crossover, because they ended up kind of parting ways at that point. So it's a kind of a fun thing. Mike and I had talked about it at the beginning of the year after the second part had been wrapped up and done on Kickstarter. And we really just wanted to kind of come into it with, a nice little epilogue to kind of cap it for the trade. And neither one of us had told each other what we were going to do. And so we both went in 2 totally different directions. And I think everybody's going to be in for a treat, because not only does it help, just kind of continue what we did and give the fans a little bit more of the Miskatonic kids and Lovecraft together, but it also, at least with, I could say for Lovecraft itself, I added a lot of stuff in there that will pertain to stories that are coming, down the road and then over the next couple of issues that we have coming out next year. So, and then the second thing we have is we're actually about to launch a Kickstarter in a couple of weeks, and we're going to do Tarzan The Untamed. And we've worked with Edgar Rice Burroughs family, and they have given us their authorized stamp.
The seal of approval.
Yeah, so we're going to be
authorized Tarzan book.
So we're going to be putting out 3 issues of that, and the first issue will be launching a Kickstarter. We're hoping October 5th, and then the next 2 issues will come out. The second issue will come out early next year, probably March on Kickstarter, and then the one will follow after that.
Can I ask what your decision to go into Tarzan was? I believe in the past when we talked, we're both fans of Conan, right? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay. I was pretty sure that came up. It's like let's do more shirtless barbarian people, but
exactly.
And also your history of being a fan of Lovecraft and all that mythos. What made you decide that Tarzan was the next step, or a new story you wanted to tell?
Well, it was actually kind of a couple of things. I had been working with some folks, and a project had dropped into my lap that I thought I was going to be doing, and I can't really go into what it was, but it was a very, it would have been a game changer for me. And unfortunately that went away. And so I was talking about it with Ryan one day, and he had written, just kind of was writing his own spec kind of version of is Tarzan.
Yeah, I had written a sort of a screenplay version of Tarzan because I still think like the great Tarzan movie is still yet to be made. There's some good Tarzan movies and everything like that, but because you can't have a guy really fighting animals, prior to computer graphics. I was sort of, this was before the last Tarzan movie. I was in my head thinking like, it's some, I think I'd just seen the Planet of the Apes remakes, and I was like, wow, there's really like someone's got to make a Tarzan movie with this technology and stuff like that. So I had written a screenplay, and then I didn't really finish it because so I was talking to Dave about it, and because Tarzan's a little bit in the public domain and it's a little bit not. It's in a weird situation, and I was sort of talking to him about it. And Dave said, yeah, so the problem with the Tarzan, the origin story, besides the fact that it's like an origin story, is that, he's a kid. He's not in it until like later on, which is maybe fun if you got a big movie and everybody, but to make a comic book, it was really Dave's idea to come up with like, well, why don't we just pick the story up where Tarzan is, not middle-aged, but he's a grown man. Mm. And then we can get right into it. And you don't have to explain everything because everybody knows who Tarzan is. And that was really kind of a stroke of genius. When we started looking past the original book, because there's 24 of these books. It's 24? I mean, of the original Burroughs books. Yeah. And, everybody fixates on the beginning and the first one, which, makes maybe sense. But we just thought it would be a great idea to pick it up and then sort of dispense with all this stuff of having to, how does he talk to, we all buy it. We all love Tarzan, but selling all that stuff of a little kid being raised by apes. I mean, that's rich. You can do a lot of stuff with it, but we want to just get into Tarzan and sort of get it in line with, that guy for me that I saw in the Saturday morning cartoons is kind of where I come into it as a kid. So we wanted to get straight into the Tarzan action, and we thought this was a great way of doing it. And so we started with Tarzan The Untamed, which I think it both caught our eye because it takes place during World War I.
Yep.
And we just thought that was an interesting backdrop that we hadn't ever seen. I mean, that's cool, right? I mean, you can put Tarzan in World War I.
Yeah, definitely. Well, the thing too is that, when we first talked about it, I remember Ryan had been working on that screenplay. And then we just happened to look up because I had heard that some of the Tarzan stuff had hit public domain. So I did some research. I was looking through all the, the synopsises, and I was like, ooh, Tarzan the Untamed sounds just crazy and wild. And it kind of picks up where we want to go, kind of just jump into it. Mm-hmm. Like Ryan said, it's like, we haven't really seen a Tarzan movie or, really kind of like what we're going for. So, being screenwriters, working in movies for a lot of years, that's kind of where our mind goes. So to be able to kind of condense that into a comic book and make it just this completely sick action, Tarzan book, as well as harkening back to the original story, which we do at the first several pages. It takes place when Tarzan meets Jane and they're 18 years old and he saves her, and then it goes into her writing, putting this into her diary, years later on her anniversary, when they're celebrating their anniversary, have been married and are back on their plantation in Africa. So, and then it goes on from there. But so once we kind of sat down and figured that out, it was just a question. I was like, let's just do it and see where the chips fall, whether we're able to get ERB on board or not. We could try to make this happen. And so far, luck has been really on our side with this whole thing. I mean, everybody we've talked to has been super psyched about it. Our illustrators are super psyched about it. ERB is really happy with us. We couldn't have asked for a better situation.
Yeah, however we came upon it, the level of enthusiasm that is met with by, like Dave said, Dave had illustrators fighting over who gets to do the Tarzan.
Yeah, Daniel's not doing it. I'm sorry. He's still busy on Lovecraft.
Yeah, but you're gonna love Pablo. Pablo has been terrific. I can't wait for people to see this book because I think Dave and I get pages and we're just really impressed. And it just suits the medium and the sort of feel we're going for and everything like that. But
I feel like it shouldn't be a difficult choice anymore, that you could just go ahead and say, we don't need Uncle Ben. We could skip that. Like, we know Uncle Ben was a person. We just have Spider-Man now. Yeah. And there's the joke of, we need to kill the Waynes again to ensure a good harvest. Like, every few years, it's time to kill the Waynes. Gunshot, pearls, pearls, pearls. Right. Moving on.
Right.
It's like that's.
Oh, I don't know if I've ever heard that one. That one.
It says it all, basically.
That
Right.
tickled me.
And so it's the that's how much actors, and shooting screen time and just taking up, how much amount of film to be like, yes, we know the Waynes died. Yes, we know Krypton explodes. Can we please have Superman punch somebody?
Well, yeah, and you figure there's 125 Tarzan movies that have been made. Okay,
Holy shit.
there's
Whoa.
100 some odd TV shows. So at some point, you just got to go. You know what? I think we have another idea that's way different and that you guys have never touched before, and that was kind of what the fun part was for us.
I mean, it's like we don't need to explain Tarzan. Tarzan is in the DNA of like the 20th century and beyond of pop culture for 100 years. And my nephew knows who Tarzan is, and my wife's father knows who Tarzan is, and they both come at it from different places, but the level of enthusiasm is the same. You say Tarzan and people are happy about it. Like they have an idea about it, and it's usually a warm feeling. And I don't know, I hope it goes on like that. And I hope what we put in front of people sort of, keeps that going, but people seem to like them. And I think that's why Dave and I started doing this. We like the idea, and everybody has a different, he's been around for so long. He's been incarnated in so many different ways that there's a lot of people with a lot of different, all positive kind of takes on them.
Well, the other thing too is that with Lovecraft, when you asked me before about jumping from Lovecraft over, Lovecraft was a fan of Burroughs, and what's funny is that I looked up recently. I was like, I was reading The Jewel of Apar because that's something that we're working towards for it's coming down the pipe, and I was like, well, wait a second, why does this sound a lot like Shadows over Innsmouth? I was like, who ripped off who? So I looked back and ripped off a borrowed, homage, or whatever. And so I looked back and I'm like, holy cow. So ERB wrote, his first, obviously. And Lovecraft wrote Shadows later, but just the transformation sequence between the Innsmouthians and the humans and the Atlanteans and the humans and all that stuff. It was like, whoa, this is kind of weird. So that's what I like about this too, is that we're all kind of playing in the same field, and everybody's kind of getting along, meaning like, these authors back in the day. Mm-hmm. And I feel we're just kind of bringing that forward as well. We're paying homage to these guys, also bringing in our new work and, melding that in, but still staying true to both, fan bases and also to the fans themselves, because to me, that's the most important thing is giving them something new and fresh, but not,
it's very true to the spirit.
Not getting rid of the lightsaber,
That's actually, I think, one of the things that ERB is pleased about is that, while Dave and I are going to bring in a lot of our own stuff to this, we're hewing so closely to Burroughs' kind of vision of his own, of his novels, which got, really twisted around early, sometimes to good effect, but with the movies, this Tarzan movies, as charming as they are, the early ones with Wes Mueller and Marina Sullivan they're not like the books necessarily in their depiction of the characters. And I think, there's aspects that were from the original books that we're treating pretty seriously. So we're really trying to keep close to the spirit of what's in the books as the starting point.
Yeah, because Tarzan's he's a really interesting character in the books. He's a conservationist. He's one that wants to make sure there's rights for everybody. He loves animals. He's basically, he's kind of the guy you want to know, because if something goes down and you hurt his family or whatever, that's when you're going to see the Tarzan, untamed and go after. And I mean, to me, that's, I don't know. We're kind of missing a lot of that type of stuff now, I feel, in comic books particularly, and even just entertainment. So to have somebody that is kind of this interesting human that's around, but he's kind of the superhuman, talks to animals and such, but is able to convey himself as a down-to-earth person, I think and not wear a cape is awesome.
I was going to ask about that because at least our generation, the main experience, like exposure that we had to Tarzan was the Disney movie. Right. That was, I remember your boy did show choir for many years growing up. the whole singing and dancing and all that stuff. And I remember when I was in 8th grade, we did a whole medley just of the Phil Collins Tarzan soundtrack, which is an absolute banger, even to this day. And that's kind of most of our experience with Tarzan, whether it's the Disney animated movie. Like we've all heard, like, every child imitated the yell and beat on their chest and all that stuff.
Sure.
And then I don't know if you count George of the Jungle, like the Tarzan ripoff, the satire, Brendan Fraser having his renaissance. Anyways, I'm curious as to what, and I was going to ask, which you've already kind of answered, like what kind of Tarzan we can expect, because a lot of us were raised just with the cartoon, which is just the grunting, trying to understand humans and then protecting and saving the day.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
That's all that with our Tarzan. There's no grunting with our Tarzan, except in the very beginning with the scene where he meets Jane. But this is a smart guy who's been to England already. Presumably he was that guy at some point in his life, but we're now he and Jane have been together for 15 years. They've got a pretty settled life in Africa. East Africa.
Yep.
And it's nice. And then, there's a war in the outside world, and that creeps in on their lives, and but they're living a nice domestic life, and he speaks perfect English, and we sort of play with that at the beginning, like he's speaking, running his estate and everything like that. But there's little hints along the way, he moves like Tarzan and stuff like that, and then something bad happens, and then Tarzan is unleashed, that's in there too. But when at the beginning of the book, he's a civilized, cultivated guy who's choosing to live in Africa because that's where he's more comfortable. But he's, presumably has lived in London, and he's still got business affairs back there. I mean, this Tarzan is he's like a Bruce Wayne or a Tony Stark. I don't know if that comes across in the movies, but he's a rich guy, and and he's multilinguist, and so that's the guy we are introduced to at the beginning. And as Dave was saying earlier, when that pin gets pulled on the grenade, though, the guy who was raised by the apes shows up.
Yeah, and I think too, the other thing we're trying to do with it, I mean, I'm going to go back to your question a little bit. I'm a little older, so I grew up growing up watching the Wes Miller ones and the Marino Sullivan ones as a kid, because those are the things, Saturday afternoon, which was great. And they had a lot of charm, excuse me, as well as some of the ones that had come later. And also there's this subculture of Tarzan movies and shows like that as well. So I always caught, like you said, George of the Jungle. So there was a lot of that stuff back in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. So you definitely get this kind of, weird mix of Tarzan through the official stuff, the unofficial stuff. So one of the things that Ryan and I were talking about with this is how the story progresses in the next couple of books, and we have other ideas for series after that, is that our Tarzan exists in the world where he is that guy. He is the comic book hero. Like, they printed comic books about him. They've taught, they've had dissertations about this guy. I mean, there's scientific, findings about him, in England. So he is kind of, it's as if Batman existed in our world today, so to speak. You know what I mean? So this character does have all this kind of baggage, celebrity baggage, along with him in our book. We'll start discovering that as we go. But I thought that would be kind of an interesting take on it, so that we answer a lot of those questions and how he's handled and how he has to deal with certain fames.
And one of the things we kind of string through it as it's a plot device or exposition device, is that Tarzan's known, and like we were saying, everybody in our real world has some idea of who Tarzan is, and it's not all the same. So we kind of brought that into the story too. So, the people who are looking for Tarzan, they have an idea of him based on maybe a dime store novel that they read. And then the other guy remembers that there was a symposium on this ape man, because he's maybe a little more learned. And then the Ascaris have a different idea of him. And everybody's got a different sense of this myth that actually exists in the world. And I mean, again, we're picking it up. He's in East Africa, like trying to live a quiet life. And so presumably maybe he's trying to get away from some of that, but that was an interesting thing we'd like to do. And it helped sort of set the thing to have everybody has a slightly different idea of what they think Tarzan is.
don't think I realized how layered the character really was, especially again having my main experience was with the Disney movie, which, you know, it's for kids.
Sure.
But looking at the source material and how I don't think I realized how much material there was. How many movies did you say there were? Like over 100?
5, I think, is what around that number.
Ton of movies.
Jeez.
But there's even 20 books that have have a canon and they have a timeline, and you know, so there's like 24 books of.
Well, and you figure too. I mean, they started off in the 20s in silent. I mean, so he started off in the silent era, you know, doing that stuff.
Right.
I think that's what's kind of neat about the fan base itself, and what we're really excited about with ERB is that, you know, even though, you know, Tarzan has been, you know, he's world renowned, and he's got all these different things: lunchboxes, movies, TV shows, cartoons, you know, anything you can imagine. But the fact that we're still kind of coming up with new stuff that we haven't quite seen yet, you know what I mean? And I think that's why they're excited too, because when we pitched them the idea of, you know, of the story and when it would take place and so on and so forth, I think they were tickled with the fact that we're actually sticking to some older, back to the original source material, as opposed to, you know, making him almost like a John Carter in his own right, you know, so to speak. You know what I mean?
I mean,
yeah,
the movies. He got famous very quickly. So like the first book came out in a magazine, and they like somebody optioned that movie, and like, you know, so those were silent films, the first ones, but they were books for a very short time. The first book got bought up and made into a movie, and then, you know, of course you can't in, you know, 1920 you're limited in what you can do in terms of portraying Tarzan and get, you know, they had to get a swimmer or an athlete because they're really swinging from vines and stuff. So, you know, when you get to the like Westmuller stuff, you know, it's all really charming and cool and everything like that. But I don't think it ever really lived up to what they became star vehicles for those guys. And so, like, I don't think Edgar Rice Burroughs was ever really happy with those. And then there's these movies that wound up competing with the Johnny Westmuller ones that were Burroughs produced. And that's the one that had the articulate Tarzan, and Tarzan's in a suit for the first time in a movie. He was always in the jungle in a loincloth beating his chest. And that's not necessarily consistent with the books. Those movies are cool. I mean, they've got their, but they're not really consistent with the books. And they sort of overwhelmed the popular perception of Tarzan before the books could even ever catch up. And Burroughs tried to make his own version as a movie, but he was competing against a hugely popular, you know, people were going, I think, to those Tarzan movies for Johnny Westmuller and Marina Sullivan. It was like a star vehicle. And so the movies that Burroughs made, they couldn't compete against that. But there is this existing movie from that time that's consistent with the books. It's just, it was overwhelmed by the popularity of the other ones. So.
Well, that's one of the things too, when we were pitching to ERB about it, we're like, you know, we're taking our Tarzan, and he's not just going to be this cat hanging out in the jungle the whole time. He's going to go to England. He's going to do all these other things that he's already done before, because he's in his 30s at this point. But the other thing too is that we have all that backstory that you may or may not know or have read about the books or not, or the stuff that we're interjecting in there. So the thing is that, you know, we're like, well, we want him to also become this kind of James Bond type of character eventually, because, like, you know, Ryan was saying, he is, you know, almost like the Bruce Wayne character. He's got the money, he's got the clout, he's got the plane, he's got the this, you know. So it's like who borrowed from who first, you know what I mean? And since we've already have that stuff kind of at our fingertips, you know, for us, it's just a nice fertile ground to really lay in a whole new Tarzan story built upon what ERB had already not only, you know, had written, but what we feel that he really wanted as well, you know, kind of just bringing Tarzan out of the jungle and into this whole other world of like how he exists in this, you know, setting.
I mean, that's something we do steadily too. I guess all the characters have a different perception of Tarzan, but then also slowly through the book, you see that Tarzan has these different stations where he's got a relationship with his ape tribe. Mm-hmm. He's got a relationship as the head of, you know, like his estate. And then we see him engage with military figures, and you realize, oh, this guy's a big deal back in England. He probably knows the king because he's Tarzan. And so he runs, and so he gets related to by different people who he has clout in different scenes, in different situations, and they're all very different situations. And I mean, that's something we're very intrigued to do, so that, like, you know, when he's I mean, I don't know to give it away, but if he gets once he gets back to London, he's he's going to be like a James Bond kind of character in that situation.
Well, and that's the thing we really wanted to make sure that happened in the book too, is that we definitely gave him different scenarios for or how he ended up talking to different folks. Mm-hmm. So he's not just I am Tarzan the whole time. It's we see the evolution and because the comic's 33 pages, so it's a little bit more than most, but you do see this nice evolution, and the way the way we get there is very subtle, but I feel works and works right into what ERB had written. Because the thing is too is that with the first issue, we have essences of the original Untamed story in there, but a lot of it stems from a paragraph that we had discovered that ERB talks about, but never really goes into the details of what happened. And for us, that was like, whoa. Like, that's the paragraph we want to use that as the kind of genesis of this whole entire story, and Untamed is what, 300?
Yeah, it's 300
pages.
Yeah, 300 pages. It was originally 2 short stories, I think.
Right. So, so for pulling out that one, paragraph and kind of exploiting that and building upon that is really kind of, I don't know. It just gave us a kind of a new way to see this character.
Yeah, it's the thing that describes the beginning of the book that we use as sort of the spine, and then we go through the book and take elements of it and then sort of replace them in time. But that's the whole, I guess, action of the first book is that thing. I don't want to give away what happens, but it's something bad happens.
Well, and we also kind of utilize some of the characters that are in the book by name, but we kind of change them up a bit, give them a little bit more something to do, or maybe they survive a little bit longer in our book than they would in his book, and so on and so forth. So we do kind of mix things up a little bit because there's no reason to just, I mean, if we wanted to reprint it, we could, but there's no reason to do that. So we wanted to add our own flavor in that and kind of really build in that whole, spy, jungle, Tarzan, that whole thing in there, which I think would be fun, and cultists and all that good stuff,
Yeah.
Because, I mean, that's the other thing with Burroughs' work. I mean, some of the Tarzan books that, he ends up fighting dinosaurs and stuff later on. I mean, it's like, it goes super crazy. So it's like, wait, this is where we can go, and we're only starting to hear. I mean, it's very fertile ground for some stuff. And so that's part of it too, is that I think we have we'll see how we do with this book, but if it's well received, we have some interesting plans for where we'd like to take this. And we're trying to, think about that all up front so when we're moving story elements around in the book, it's going to be to serve a larger kind of thing. So, right.
So I take it you two are already friends. It's not like you met through making things, because as you had said, like, you were talking about the story as you were writing it.
Yeah.
So what made you decide to team up? Was it just like
Well, we've known each other since we were about 5 years old. So it's been a long run. And we've worked on projects together throughout the years. Whether we worked in films together out in LA, or we ended up working on each other's projects, writing, and so on and so forth. So it's one of those things. We've always had we've always kind of worked off of each other, but once, with him with his original Tarzan screenplay, and then, myself coming up with some of this other stuff, we're like, well, why not? It seems like a good way to do it. And we both have some really good ideas on how to do it. And we work just well together in that way, in that capacity.
Yeah. I mean, like, we've been friends a long time, but the thing Dave's being modest about is that the fundamental difference is that Dave has built up this infrastructure through Dark Side Media, so that, prior to, the internet's been a real blessing in some ways, and other ways not. But like, one of the things is the ability to, find talent online and then to work online and stuff like that. But, and I think I was doing some of that with this other guy that I was doing a comic book with. But, what Dave's done with Dark Side Media is he's managed to make it into a viable thing, so that if, we can know that we're going to at least get it out there. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, so that if we could, we've both got good day jobs. So like, we can afford to put a little bit of money into it, and we can roll the dice a little bit, because Dave's been successful with these Kickstarter campaigns. And that's a hugely pivotal reason why. So when we were just, talking on the phone about this stuff, because, we've all been locked up because of the pandemic. And so we've been just chatting about stuff, and it was like, well, geez, you're doing good with your Lovecraft stuff and all the Dark Side Media stuff, and the crossover stuff was such a big success. And I was like, we can try and do this. And I think that was sort of what was the animating force behind it. So there wasn't just an idea. And Dave's got this great staff of artists too, and not just artists, but editors and letterers and colorists. And
and I think, and I also think too, thanks, man. I appreciate you saying that. But I also think too, that's what helped us, with ERB as well, because prior to that, when we were coming up with the story, the beginning of the year and forging ahead with that, we had slight concerns about if we had to deal with copyright and trademark and all that, but it's such kind of a convoluted situation between what's public domain, what they own, what's trademark, and so on and so forth, that we were like, you know what, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. And then we got, more than halfway through the book, and we're like, oof, boy, this is looking really good. Maybe we should just take a stab and see what happens with these guys. So the great thing is when I reached out to them, I showed them the Kickstarter stuff that I had done, and we had already come off of 2 or 3 other campaigns this year. So we're really looking pretty good. And after during our first discussion with the ERB team, they had told us actually that they were about to launch a Kickstarter, which they just wrapped up not too long ago. And it's, Tarzan's maid, Jane Porter. So she had her own comic they put on Kickstarter. So they were picking my brain about Kickstarter because that's something they had never done. And so it was, I think we met on a common ground like that, because everybody's trying to rediscover this whole new way of distributing since, the old ways are, kind of going to the wayside at this point. So I think that kind of, that worked in our favor, as well as the fact that we had a really good pitch of ideas and sent them the artwork. And after that, they were, they really like what we had to do. And I think they trust us with, with what we have. And if I'm not mistaken, I think us and Dark Horse Comics are the only 2 that have licensing right now for doing comics for Tarzan.
Yeah.
I did want to, I wanted to ask and you've touched on it a couple times. You've mentioned working with ERB and the family, the estate, however they kind of put it. Can you speak to what that relationship's been like, how that came to be? Was it, you had nothing but good things to say so far, so it doesn't sound like it was really a difficult process.
Well, it's funny because going into it, I had a lot of friends that, not friends, but just, fans, I guess, online. And I was kind of kicking the idea around when we first started working on the book. I mentioned in my Kickstarter and stuff like that, and a couple of people online saying, hey, I think we're going to do a Tarzan book. We'll see what happens. And everybody's like, oh, I don't know. It might be tough to deal with. They might have tough licensing and so on and so forth. And honestly, I couldn't be happier. It was one of those things where I knew we had a good product. It had gone through the spanking machine so many times with all the guys in my crew and Ryan working on it that it was a good vibe. And it's very rare at least for myself, that if we have something that's got such good kind of, mojo with it, that it goes to the wayside. And I feel with this, we had a really good product to move forward with. And so I think they saw that too. And they saw we were earnest about it, and our analytics of how we were doing, with our Lovecraft books and such. I think they were like, well, sure, why not? Because for them, you got to understand, the copyright stuff's starting to go away. So it's, they really need to work on, keeping that brand alive with trademarks and new copyrights and so on and so forth. So I think, we're all helping each other out in the end. And what's been really great is the fact that it's not a corporation conglomerate. It's 3 people who we're talking to, and that's it. And it's been really sweet about it. And what's great is that they're helping us navigate through some of these, like Tarzan pitfalls we didn't know about,
Yeah, absolutely.
So it just benefits the fans as well in the end, frankly.
Yeah.
Yeah,
they've been great. And like Dave said, I think it's just because I think they like the direction of it. And I think they sense the earnestness in what we're doing. And, Dave's capable of producing books now in a pretty good professional, expedient way too, and I think that track record is a big part of it.
Oh, that's a lesson learned from years of dealing with Kickstarter. So always make sure the product's done first, or at least almost done to the point. Yes. But I think that's key.
We talk to a lot of makers and creators, and there's been a lot of advice and stories of how, who's done this and how has it worked for them. And one of the biggest things is just start making and start creating. But there's a point where you could be the most passionate person about your project, but it helps if you have something behind it. And I imagine you couldn't go to ERB being one person with no team saying, I want to make this thing. And them saying, you're just one person, dude. You don't have, this chain of people to help you or work with you, or there's no proven product. And sometimes you have to take that time and you have to pause and
Sure.
make something else. You have to make your own project, and you can't always go for your moonshot on your first try. You kind of got to work up to it.
Well, and I think, I mean, for myself, I learned that a lot when I worked in film for a very long time, and I always try to get projects made on my own, and it's extremely difficult. And even if I had a crew, it's just you still are missing the money, or vice versa. So I always found with getting into comics, Lovecraft was an easier enough thing because it was public and domain. His works are public domain, but kind of took it in our own direction and made our own character and so on and so forth out of it. But it's still, working, making sure that the fans were also happy as well, and just rediscovering some new aspects of the Lovecraft stuff, the lore and mythos that maybe they didn't know about. On the same token, it's the same thing with Tarzan. It's like, we could never get Tarzan until we had that all built up, because I would have gone to ERB 5 years ago or 3 years ago. I think it's, you have to have some moderate success and at least be able to know that you can get the job done. Not only just get the job done, but then, have a quality enough product so that they see what you're trying to do. And it's not just a kind of a money grab. You're actually, you believe in, it's like what how I feel with Lovecraft. It's like, I love his writing, and, we want to make sure that he, his work still shines. And the same with Mr. Burroughs. We love his writing. We love the character Tarzan. And it's one of those things that's like, why not, if we can add to that universe and bring our own stories into it, why not? But I think that you're right. I think it does come from years of, just making sure you're ready for that.
Yeah.
It gives you that confidence to because with something that's been around for so long, there's so much backstory. There's, like you said, there's hundreds of movies, 20 something novels. There's so much source material, and there's so much history that goes with it. Everyone knows who Tarzan is. To do the character right, and to make sure that you leave your mark, and also that people who might be avid fans are like, yes, this is it. They got Tarzan. They knew what they were doing.
Right. Yeah, and with the whole why not do it too is that's like the whole thing. That's what's so great about this crowdfunding and all the stuff that like the internet opens up, because Dave and I go way back, and we've had various attachments to like movies, production, and I've written scripts that have been like even taken out with an agent and stuff like that. And there's been so many like close, like, you get the ball to here, and then and we've got friends in the business who like I've got a buddy who's been paid for like 8 screenplays, and none of them have been on the screen ever. There's all this stuff because Dave and I come out of the movie business a little bit, and so there's just something about the fact that you can get to the work now. So like there's really nothing standing between, well, again, because of this network that Dave's put together. So we were, you want to do a Tarzan book? Yeah, I guess we can, whereas like, I kept saying that like, all right, what if we had written this great Tarzan script before, and then like before the internet, before Kickstarter and this, this ecosystem of distribution, he could write the best Tarzan script in the world, and then what? We would, if we wanted to be a comic, we'd bring it to whoever held the license, and we'd be knocking on the door. Do you have an artist for us to use, or like or we'd go to, bring a screenplay to someone and wait 8 months to be told no, and then so
if we would even get the call back.
Yeah, so it's just like the whole why not of it is such a beautiful thing in all this, because we had this conversation. How long have we been, like 8 months ago? Less?
Yeah, like end of December, we started talking about it. Like January, we started writing it.
And we're like, oh, geez, that's not a bad idea. And why not? And like Dave said, we'll give it a try. And, there's such a rich history of Tarzan ripoffs. We figure if no one wants, we can put out a ripoff version of it as a joke almost, because at least we could do an unofficial version, I suppose, and nobody would read it, or it would have, minimal success because the name and and all the stuff you'd have to dodge. But, there's a lot of Tarzan ripoffs off there, and we could have just made that. So we're like, well, let's just do a Tarzan book, and then we'll, if we come up with something good, we'll just knock on the front door and see if they let us in. And they kind of did. So,
well, that's what's nice too, is Tarzan is probably one of the oldest IPs around at this point. That's still making quite a bit of money, and is also globally known. I mean, that's the other thing too, is, people could say Star Wars, Star Trek, and any other franchise right now, but Tarzan's been around for a long, long time, and you can ask anybody, and they may not have read all the stories, but if you mention the word Tarzan, they know, like Ryan said earlier, between his nephew and his father-in-law, it's like, anybody, a lot. It's just it has such a wide expanse and a wide audience to kind of reach, that it's like, if our little story can make a partial dent into that fan base, I'm psyched, because I think it'd be fun for people to see. And granted, I mean, I don't read a lot of new comics that come out, but nothing has come across my radar recently with a lot of new Tarzan stuff out, especially what we're kind of going for. So I don't know. I think it's the right time, right place, and
hopefully people will like it. I think we're both pretty proud of it, though. I think the first issue is looking pretty tight. I think you guys, Pablo, again, has just done an amazing job packing a lot of story into 33 pages.
Yeah, 33 pages.
And it's like, it moves along. The story moves along, and we're pretty proud of the arc of the character, even in the first story, just as a first act to set this character up and set up the status quo. But, we get right to it, and there's a lot of action, and the Tarzan at the beginning of issue 1 is not the Tarzan at the end of issue 1.
No.
So, I hope people like it, but I'm confident it'll have some kind of audience.
Was it easy to make the transition from screenplay writing to comic book script writing?
Well, yeah, it was easy for me because I didn't do it. Wrote it out, I beat it out as a screenplay, and then Dave and Dave's editor.
Yeah, Francisco. So right. So Ryan wrote the screenplay, then I took it and I rewrote it as a comic script, and to get all the beats down and everything we kind of needed. And then after him and I went over it and made sure we had everything, we sent it to my guy Francisco, and he gives it a final polish, make sure that because he works with Daniel, he works with Pablo, he works with my whole crew. So, and he joined our team a couple of years ago now, and it's been super helpful because it elevates the work. And he, because all those guys know each other, they work around the clock behind my back to bring everything to light, even tighter than what I could even do. So I think having, and it's also, somebody with fresh eyes that may or may not know Tarzan. So for handing this stuff off to my editor, it's been just a godsend, and he really tightens it up.
Francisco brings as one of the writers here, you get precious with everything, and Francisco just brings a real level of polish to the whole thing and just smooths it all out. But I'll say this too, this is an interesting thing, is that because we're all working, we're writing it and Pablo's illustrating it and Francisco's editing it, but everybody seems to be working for Tarzan, so nobody's getting precious about it. It's like everybody's pulling for the institution. And so it's been really great to work writing with Dave, and all those fights you might have if it was like your own thing. You're like, it's got to be this way because I'm the guy who invented this.
Right.
There's been something really great about adapting this, and just adapting something that everybody feels so positive about, that it's just there's good mojo on the team. Like everybody's really, it's like we're pulling for Tarzan more than we're pulling for ourselves or something like that. And that's been a really wonderful creative experience.
Yeah, definitely.
So when I was writing Starwell Foundation, which is the OMV Productions audio drama, I'm so used to reading comic books, and in magazines or in the back of graphic novels, they usually print some with a script. So I've gotten really used to reading comic book scripts. So now I'm writing an audio drama, and I show it to a few of my friends who are good at making stuff and work in film, and and some of them go, "Oh, well, here, you should try this script format, like an actual script format thing." And they sent me like an app to use or a certain file to arrange it differently. And I hated that so much. I couldn't do it. I didn't have the capacity to enter it that way. Like that's just not what was appearing in my head. And it's the same story, but it's just the layout was slightly different. And I could not do it. I had to go back to something that was more like what you would see from a comic writer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I've been writing screenplays for a long time, so for me, it's been a very hard road to try to convert it to comics because of how expansive I see it in my head as a screenplay. And I've been working in comics now for 11 years, and it's still, I only feel within the last few years I've been finally able to dial it in, and having Francisco on board now to kind of set up the lane for me to kind of stay in has been great, because now it's easier for me to make that translation. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So it's like, even though I have to write it differently and think about it differently, because you're thinking in a panel, you're not thinking,
a scene,
1920 by 780 or whatever. So it's just a whole other thing. But what I have to say too about Pablo is that whatever we gave him for the script, he even adds, his own depth into it, because there's so many panels in there that have, like Ryan said, a lot of information, but the depth of field that this guy draws in is incredible. So you're really getting a big bang for your buck in every panel.
I was going to ask about that. So did you specifically, have you already worked with Pablo, or were you looking for a person to say, yeah, we're going to have to draw a lot of shirtless Vine dude versus, and because we always hear stories of some artists who go, look, don't write a car into my scene. I don't want to draw cars. I don't want to draw buildings. Or who was that? Daniel, who does Lovecraft with you, right? Was that?
Yes. Yeah.
And he gets a level of fashion with what Board wears and what like the Frogman is going to wear. And there's different outfits, and then there's different monsters versus it's just a lot of trees, dude. It's a lot of jungle.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Well, I mean, with Pablo,
makes it sing.
Oh yeah, definitely. No, with Pablo, because Daniel is busy doing Lovecraft, and he also does Berserkers for us, which is out now, and so his play was quite full. So we were also wanted to go with, because Daniel's artwork also has, the way his style is. Obviously, his style is very different than Pablo's, and one of the things I wanted to try was to go back to the old comic strips of Tarzan. And the comic strips of Tarzan have very thin line work, kind of vibrant color, and more fluidity than the actual comic books that came out, I felt. And so we're looking for an artist. That's kind of what we were trying to go for, is to find somebody that can kind of take that idea and bring it into a comic form. And that's where I think he works very well in, is that his line work is very thin, but is very strong in the sense of action and expression. And then Damien is now working on the colors, and holy cow, man. I mean, Damien's been with me now for 11 years, and almost 11 years, and his color is just getting better and better each time,
The book's looking really nice. I mean, like, those guys are just doing a bang up job. And, the kinetic part of it, there's just sort of a momentum once the sort of roller coaster goes to the top of the, ride in this one. And hopefully that has something to do with our writing, but it's a lot of Pablo. He just keeps that thing moving in this way. He's very efficient. And then just the whole, the way the stuff I don't understand, the way the panels fit together, he picks just the right scene, the right thing, and it really hums. We got the right guy. Did we mention that he's drawing it? Like, he's pencil drawing it?
Yeah, he's pencil. Well, that's the other thing too, is he's working in old school. He's drawing pencil, and then inking it, and then he does a scan in. So it definitely has that kind of authentic feel of the old strips.
Yeah, the ink especially. It's cool to see someone still doing ink on paper.
Okay, so This, I don't know if this is, so the Kickstarter doesn't launch until October. We're in early September right now. And I have a question. I don't know how you're going to feel about this. It's is, but isn't advice. Would any original pages get put up for as perks in the Kickstarter?
Yes. Well, we're working on that.
Okay.
That's all I can say.
Okay.
It's we're trying to get them. Pablo is located in Argentina,
right?
So shipping is a little tough. So him and I are in discussion about that and trying to get those here in time. The only thing is I don't want to put anything up until I know I physically have them, because they could easily just disappear.
Yeah. Yeah. Shipping overseas is rough. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's if we don't have them for this one, we will definitely have them for the next one. But that's the thing that him and I are working out right now, and it's just a question of being able to get them up here in time.
Okay.
So.
It's when people are a fan of something, and like if they could get an item of the thing that made the product, which is
definitely.
There's plenty of collectors who've been kind of disappointed in how much digital media is out there, even though the artists can work much faster and edit more and change more, and just the expediency is just amazing. But then they don't get to also, sell that page because it's just a digital file now. Yeah. So there's
exactly, and that's one of the things we wanted to kind of apply to this. It's just it's been a bit of a struggle trying to get stuff here. So that's one of the reasons why I didn't want to put anything up, because I wanted to guarantee that we have it. And right now we don't.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, there is something very tactile about it. I don't know if you can perceive it, or if it's just, but there's just something you can tell that it's drawn by hand, and it just fits the kind of tone of the book. And it's a nice coincidence. I don't think, we cared at the beginning, but it's Pablo's choice. But boy, it just adds a little something, like some granular kind of like depth to it or something.
Mm-hmm.
Before we run out of time, I did want to talk about the actual campaign itself, which Alex just noted that it's going to be starting next month. What was the strategy going in? What do you got in terms of looks like goal? You mentioned that there's going to be 3 issues, so 3 different Kickstarters. What's the campaign looking like?
Yeah, so we have 3 different. We'll have 3 different stories for this one. So it'll be the 3 acts. And what we wanted to do, I'm a big fan of Simon Bisley, and Lobo and Judge Dredd. I mean, this guy's been around for, I'd say, 40 years in the comic industry at this point. And I had seen some of his I had met him at a show a few years ago, and we had talked about working together. And then I had come across some of his work of Tarzan, some bits that he had done back, I think, in the late 90s covers. And his Tarzans are just insane. So I reached out to him, and I was like, hey, man, we're looking to do a Tarzan book. Would you be interested? And again, like everybody else, he just leaped to the challenge. So we're looking to get an official cover from Bisley within the next couple of days. And as on the Kickstarter, I'm sure you guys see the sketch that we have of his stuff right now that's up there. So we've got that going for us, which is great, because having him on board as a Tarzan fan, as well as who has done the work, is just great. And then we have we got Pablo's artwork on the site, so you get to see some of the first couple of pages of how we're making it all, how it all looks. And then as far as that goes with the we also have a variant that Pablo did for us as well that's on there right now. And then as far as the rewards, we're keeping it pretty simple. I mean, we've got the issue itself, the PDF, and then we have the variant, obviously, and then we have the different combinations of all that stuff. And then, of course, with one of the things that's been interesting is that I had stopped doing it for a while in previous Kickstarters, but on Berserkers that we just finished up, I was reached out by a couple of comic stores, and they were like, "Oh, could you bring back the retail?" So I was like, all right, sure. So in this one, too, we have a bunch of retail stuff that we're going to do. We have Tarzan retail. Then we also have a mixed bag of retail between that and Lovecraft, PI, and Berserkers you can get. And we also have a pin that we're wrapping up a design for. So we'll have a Tarzan The Untamed pin, which will be metal. So it'll be a gold rim with red letters. It looks really pretty. And then after that, the other thing too we have with Kickstarter, which is nice, is that we have the add-ons, which is a great thing that Kickstarter has done. So if you have any back issues of Lovecraft that you're missing or Berserkers, we also have the crossovers up there. Will be up there for this campaign, so you can get that. So it's a pretty full. As far as a quote small campaign goes for us, it still has a lot of stuff, so which is pretty awesome. So we're happy about that.
I'm missing 2 of those coins, so I think it might be time to fill them in.
Yeah, we keep big sellers. Yeah, we have. Well, we will be doing a Tarzan coin probably for the next once the second issue comes out. We're working on the design for that now, so we will have a Tarzan coin eventually.
We can't give it away though.
No,
it's part of the story, so it's like a little so we can't talk about it.
But so we definitely have some. We get the Lovecraft coins. I always switch up, so we got some new ones up there. Well, not new ones, but maybe new to some folks.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Sounds like a good excuse, because not only will you get coins, Alex, but you also get a Tarzan book.
Yeah,
exactly.
A sick Tarzan book.
Well, and the other thing too is what's great too. We were talking about ERB earlier. What's we haven't put up on the preview link right now. Joel, our graphic artist, is still working on it. But ERB was really kind enough. They gave us 15 of their hardcover books that we're going to also have on there in the add-on section. So if you the original Untamed story companion to go along with what we're doing, you can buy that, and they all have vibrant, beautiful covers.
They're kind of gorgeous editions, like beautiful illustrations on the cover and interior pages and stuff like that. Really nice.
Yeah, so we're working with them on the license for they're licensing all that stuff with them as well. So it's that's going to be up there. So that's going to be exciting to see how many people we can turn back on to just Burroughs' original works as well.
Before we get to the end, I did want you had mentioned at the beginning that they're actually happening right now is another project. How's that one going?
It's going very well. We're hitting close to $18,000 on the project. We've got a little less than 2 weeks left, and it's the Lovecraft PI meets Miskatonic High trade paperback. So it's the 2 issues that we did, and then we have 23 additional pages we did for an epilogue that continues the story of the 2 sets of characters, the Miskatonic kids and Detective Lovecraft and what happened. And just to give you a little brief, with the kids epilogue, it's with the girls. At the end of part 2, Lovecraft has left a little note with a spell for one of the characters from Miskatonic. So their epilogue kind of continues on that spell and how to get the information or the ingredients for that. And then with Lovecraft, he ends up in Dreamland and ends up with Nyarlathotep and dealing with some night gaunts. So we took that into a whole different direction that we've seen with Lovecraft before, because normally you keep him in kind of this reality. So for the 10 or so 12 or so pages that we did, we stuck him in Dreamland and in what little hell he has to go through to get out of there.
How did that team up come across?
I'm sorry, what was that?
How'd that team up between you and the Miskatonic High? How'd that initiate and come about? Like who approached who and decided, they can meet. It's like Batman and Scooby-Doo.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Mike and I have been doing Kickstarters for a while on there, and I came across his work, and I really liked the idea because it was, to me, it reminded me of like Archie and meets Lovecraft, monsters, and I was like, oh, this is kind of cool with these kids in modern times dealing with their own Lovecraftian issues with monsters and spells and cultists and all that. And I thought, I've always loved the old Scooby-Doo stuff where they throw in Batman and whoever else. It was always kind of fun and wacky and weird. And with Lovecraft, I never wanted to really pigeonhole him into just always being, the Noir detective stuck in the 20s and 30s. I figured, well, why not branch him out a little bit? And, the told fish out of water story is a lot of fun. So to be able to have that happen, with Mike was great. And I just reached out to him and I asked him, I said, hey, what do you think? He was a fan of our stuff. And he thought it was a great idea. So it just took us a little bit to kind of come up with a story. And we put out the first issue came out November of last year. And then the second issue came out February of this year. So both campaigns did very, very well. So we have a lot of fans that came back for the trade.
That's fun. I like team ups.
Yeah, me too. You never know. There might be a Lovecraft and Tarzan team up in the future.
I always said to Dave about it because I'm just a fan of the Lovecraft stuff, of the Lovecraft PI, and I've been a fan from the beginning when he was starting this, and when he did the crossover, I was like, man, this is just proof of concept. The idea that you can get this character into this world with these kids, because they're different kinds of books, but the crossovers work beautifully. I mean, I thought it was like kind of a stroke of genius.
Thanks. Yeah, that was fun. I was happy it came out so well.
Yeah, it works. I mean, it's a good idea to market and grow your art, but I mean, they're really charming. Those crossover books are great.
Well, congratulations on the current campaign. I'm excited to see how high that one can climb, and then also best of luck with the upcoming Tarzan book. Before we wrap up, where can people go? We like to give a moment or two to kind of plug stuff. Obviously, we've talked about the Kickstarter a lot. However, if there's anything else, if there's socials, if there's appearances, they're few and far between, but they are popping up more and more. So who knows? But where can people go between the two of you if they wanted to find more of your stuff?
Sure. So right now we just wrapped a campaign on Kickstarter with our third series, Berserkers. We just wrapped up issue 2 of that out of an 8-issue series. The third issue will be coming out in November on Kickstarter. So, you could pick up the add-ons on the next campaign. But otherwise, you can find us on Instagram, either at Lovecraft PI or Darkside Media or Tarzan Untamed, and also at lovecraftpi.com.
Awesome.
You can find me at ryanmatta.com, though none of that is relevant to what we're talking about. Mostly my work as a graphic artist, as a motion graphic artist. So I guess, I don't know, ryanmatta.com if you have any interest. I don't know why you would. I'm the writer. I'm one of the writers on the book, so I'd say pay more attention to what Dave just said, but I don't know.
Right. Excellent. I'm pumped to see where this goes. I admittedly have extremely limited Tarzan experience, so this sounds like a great excuse to broaden my knowledge. Best of luck on the campaign. I hope it kills it. And thank you both so much for coming on and doing this. This is a blast.
Yeah, thank you guys. I really appreciate it.
Talk to you.
Thanks so much, man.
I think that's going to do it. We've talked Tarzan until we're blue in the face tonight. I think that sounds like a good night to me. So I think that's going to do it. So until next time, I've been JR.
I'm Alex.
This is DW.
And this is Ryan.
And this has been episode 435 of Opinions May Vary. Hey everyone, if you liked that episode, be sure to follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Opinions May Vary, and on Twitter and YouTube at OMV Podcast. You can also find us on Spotify or on our very own website at omvpodcast.com. And if you're looking for merch, we have stickers and pins available over at omvpodcast.bigcartel.com while supplies last. As always, thank you so much for listening. Let us know what you thought in the comments, and we will see you next time.